Man, what a day. I really just need something scary to make me feel better. What's this? Welcome to the shocking, eerie, and distressing haunted house. Well, hey, that looks fun. Let's go inside. It's so dark in here. You think I'm scared of boobs? I can't get enough of them. What else you got? Nothing I can't use for my imagination. Am I right?
Ooh, spooky! Demon kissing! Oh no, so scary! I love Megan Thee Stallion. It's time to watch the political art video.
No! I don't want to see the whole video! Stop it! All art is political is a saying you may have seen floating around the internet in the past few weeks. Especially if you're on the side of the internet that belongs to discourse around anime and manga. This is thanks to the YouTuber and podcast bro, the Anime Man, who recently decided to take into his own hands the problem of anime tourists. In that video of his, he compares the genocide of indigenous people in the Americas by Columbus and his goons to that of tourists taking over anime. Consequently, a lot of people were getting on his ass for using a terribly overblown analogy, and his response to all of that was
making it way too overly political for your own good is just not my problem. Okay? It's really not that deep.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Since then, what has ensued is a endless back and forth between it's not that deep grifters and well-meaning people who consistently won't stop engaging with blue check accounts. Clips of a previous Trash Taste episode where Hassan Piker was on and he's saying One Piece is political, to what seemed to be jeers from the likes of Joey. Notorious accounts like Chibi Reviews posting on Twitter that anime can't be political, look at the jiggle physics on this girl, and so on and so forth. The culture war on the politics of anime has reached a fever pitch. And I don't believe that either side has adequately fought for what their philosophies actually are. Because, yes, whether art is inherently political is a philosophy. And despite what some people might try to say, anime and manga are art too. Which means, like all other art forms, it is subject to criticisms and philosophical ideals that have been around since at least the 1800s. Where we actually need to start this video, though, isn't with the history of the debate or even what my personal stance on it is. What we need to do is understand the statement itself. All art is political. Many people take this as a very literal statement, as if anyone who believes this philosophy is trying to say that art is all Democratic, Republican, or third party. That all art is trying to get you to vote a certain way, or has views on a certain policy or law that's on the ballot. This philosophy isn't trying to argue that that stick figure you doodled is trying to get you to vote for Zoran Mamdani. No, it's much more simple than that. All art is inherently political because the artist behind a piece of work is inherently shaped by their viewpoints, their upbringing, and the politics of the world. No person lives in an apolitical utopia, so every one of our choices is going to be influenced by the outside world. This is where a lot of people will jump in with the actually, because they think they found a perceived flaw in this philosophy. If you go back a little bit in the video, I just mentioned a stick figure. How in the world can a random drawing of a stick figure be political in any way? For that matter, how could abstract art or landscape art or classical music have any sort of view or upbringing that shaped it? To explain this philosophy further, let's go ahead and look at a tweet from earlier this year from a creator who I like quite a bit, Frillis. He makes the claim that all art is not actually political, especially ones that don't have narrative, and uses a stick figure drawing that he made, which he believes had no sort of societal views, shape its creation. But looking closer at the tweet, you can see that there are many socially political clues that would lead you to believe otherwise. First of which is the automatic gendering of the stick figure as a man. Frillis is a man, and it might just be a given to him that the stick figure he drew would be a man too. In fact, even outside of men, most people would probably gender their stick figures as a man. This is due to the societal upbringing that everyone has had, that a man is the neutral, whereas any other gender is seen as an other. From there, we can only assume what the stick figure looked like because Frillis didn't attach a beautiful stick figure drawing to this tweet. But you can probably imagine that the standard stick figure is going to have 2 arms and 2 legs. This could be seen as the able-bodied as a neutral, that all people will have 2 arms and 2 legs, even if that isn't true. An able-bodied person, like myself, might not think to draw a stick figure any other way. Even the act of drawing an apolitical stick figure can be seen as political, because staying out of politics can be a direct consequence of your position in society or your identity. If you're someone who is not affected by political actions, then the ability to remain silent is both a statement and a privilege. Artist Ai Weiwei describes this concisely when he said, "Creating art without fear for your life shows your political freedom." The whole idea that ambiguous art is without meaning is also kind of just dismissive to anyone who makes abstract or landscape art. Just because their artwork doesn't have any overt message doesn't mean that there's no meaning to it at all. Abstract artist Sam Gillam, who is most known for his outside the frame draped canvas paintings, would probably say otherwise too. He experimented with new ways of displaying artworks in galleries, which goes against the traditional art school politics. Art schools, which are very often Eurocentric and bourgeois. If you only give one look to his vibrant works, you might think that there's no inherent politics to the beautiful folds and flows. However, in Gillam's own words, abstract art is political because of how it messes with you.
How can abstract art be political?
It messes with you. It convinces you that what you think isn't all. And it challenges you to understand something that is different, that a person can be just as good in difference and sometimes adversity, opposed to what you believe. I mean, if that's your tradition of you call figures, you don't understand art anyway.
Gillam's way of creation inherently is political because it messes with the politics of the art world, making the way that galleries are held cater to a new kind of creation. Now, I should say that the debate around the politics of art has definitely increased in a postmodern capitalist world, especially with the widening gap between the ultra-rich and the average person. Most people aren't able to make choices in their life that aren't going to be influenced by politics, and that is mostly by design. With the smallest percent of people owning the largest amount of wealth, billionaires like Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, Buffett, or Koch are able to influence our political landscape, all while owning the majority of the companies that us common folk need to live. At this point in society, it is impossible to avoid politics. Which just reminds me of that scene from The Good Place where Judge Jen finds out why living on Earth absolutely sucks.
I know you don't like to learn too much about life on Earth to remain impartial, but these days just buying a tomato at a grocery store means that you are unwittingly supporting toxic pesticides, exploiting labor, contributing to global warming. Humans think that they're making one choice, but they're actually making dozens of choices they don't even know they're making.
The Good Place truly was a generational show, and it's surprising to me that I feel like no one talks about it anymore. Prior to postmodernism, though, which came around in like the 50s or 60s, the debate on art and politics was actually more about what art should be. I think these philosophical ideas aren't so different from how people argue for or against the inherent political nature of art right now, but the biggest difference is that back then, it it was more a debate about what art should strive to be. Should it be entirely committed to political messaging, or should it be completely autonomous? Committed art were works that had undeniable political signifiers that were outright put into the artwork. Think of pieces like Guernica by Pablo Picasso, or the Hiroshima panels by Toshi and Iri Maruki, or The Dinner Party by Judy Chicago. Committed art is art that is supposed to teach you something or be used as propaganda. On the other end, you have autonomous art. Art which strives to put form, aesthetics, and technique above any form of subject matter. This also falls under the belief of l'art pour l'art, or art for art's sake. This is a similar view to autonomous art that focuses more on the artistic talents and raw abilities of a work. It's not really supposed to evoke emotion, you're just supposed to be in awe of the artist's talent or just the beauty of the work in general. Autonomous art is a bit harder to pin down for someone like myself who does believe that art is inherently political, but some might point to works like Water Lilies by Claude Monet, or maybe you would point to works by Dante Rossetti during the aesthetics movement heyday. Neither of the two beliefs of committed art or autonomous art really capture the arguments that are happening nowadays, but I do think the basis of these two ideas are firmly planted in a lot of the discussion. For myself, it isn't about whether art should be firmly sending a message and being committed to politics, because there's no right or wrong way to make art, but rather that because art is made by people, it is going to be committed in one way or the other. Take the painters from the aesthetic movement like Dante Rossetti. These painters valued beauty and form above all else because this was a drastic change from how art schools would teach art as being all about the subject matter. The act of making art purely for art and not because it is committed is an act of being committed itself because it is made in detest of school politics. Not to mention, because it is a purely aesthetics movement, you also get into the debate of what makes something beautiful or not. Many of the paintings in this movement consisted of decadently dressed, beautiful, fair-skinned women. This is something that could be seen as political. While I think that the art for art's sakes believers were 100% more appreciative of art and the form of rebellion that it can be used for, the right-wing anime YouTube grifters do kind of sound like they're parroting that same school of thought at times, minus the, well, thought. Anime and manga should have no deeper messages or meaning lest it get in the way of entertainment. Anime and manga are purely made for being visually engaging and used for enjoyment. La anime et manga pour la anime et manga. They almost forget that anime and manga isn't just a visual medium, and there will always be an inherent politicization of it because the artist's views will shape the story and the writing. Yet, for the people who stand by the philosophy that anime and manga should not be critiqued for its narrative, purely use this form of art as consumption, which is where the biggest difference between autonomous art believers and right-wing anime grifters will diverge in that school of thought. I think it's time that we get into the modern day discourse then. We know that the idea that art should not be political has been around forever, but in this divisive culture, in this divisive climate, the nature of the political has definitely changed. The political is now also the social. But the largest argument that people have for art not being inherently political is that tight hold to the literal definition. Politics as a word must only be concerning governing parties, laws, and regulations. At the same time, though, they'll also see a non-sexualized woman talking about feminism in their anime and say that that's political too. The simple notion of a black person appearing before them on the screen will make their eyes bulge. This is all a direct contradiction when these people are trying to poke holes into this philosophy. If women or POC's existence is inherently political to you, then politics as a word has changed to include the social. To examine that argument, let's go ahead and look at the manga series Gene Bride, a sci-fi drama about a woman named Isahaya who is constantly worn down by the discrimination she faces as a woman in society, until one day a former classmate appears and reminds her of an event in her school days called Gene Bride. This manga is expressly feminist, with a revealing interview with the author, Hitomi Takano, in the back of volume 2 of the series. She had read a book called We Should All Be Feminists, and afterwards realized the discrimination that she was facing throughout her entire life. Thus, the series Gene Bride came to be, where she decided to use the story to vent all of her frustrations that she had pent up throughout the years. For those who believe that art being political should only be about governance, should look at Gene Bride then and say that this is not a political series. Sure, it tackles gendered oppression, gendered violence, and gender inequality, but the manga never talks about laws to fix these things or government structures that need to be eradicated. It's purely a science fiction tale where the narrative is driven by the feelings a woman has about her life. The only thing that this manga is wanting to change is the mindsets people have about women or about their own lives. But if you hear feminism or sexism and have the reaction that this manga should then be considered political, you would have to open up the definition of what that term means. It would then have to include social inequalities, the discriminatory nature of the world we live in against women, people of color, trans people, queer people, disabled people, homeless people, etc., etc. Of course, I'm hopefully assuming that you, as the viewer, aren't so red-pilled that you don't believe this is a thing in the first place. Like, I'm hoping and assuming and wishing that you guys just aren't thinking that there's no discrimination unless it's against white people. With this in mind, we can now adequately evaluate how anime and manga are inherently political under the lens that it's political in its decisions. Tweets where fans try to gotcha the philosophy by showing fan service or gooner moments fail to realize that the sexualization of women has social implications. Women in our entertainment being used as an object to be ogled and denigrated for pleasure is a norm we have all grown up with. And all genders participate in this regardless of their own gendered oppression. Partially, this is due to the consumerist idea that sex, namely women's bodies, sells, and that view has become so commonplace that we rarely self-reflect. So, fan service, or the lack thereof, whether it's a big statement in the narrative or not, is political in how women are portrayed. The gooner bait isn't a big loophole in this philosophy, it's a big honkin' double D feature. Outside of tropes of fan service or lucky pervert moments, you can widely apply this philosophy to your favorite anime and manga as well. While people on Twitter use One Piece as a beacon for inherently political anime and manga, I personally have not kept up with the manga since I fell off of it around volume 70 when I was in high school, so I can't, be the one to talk about it. I can, however, use the shoujo manga series Yona of the Dawn, another pretty in-your-face political manga that follows the story of a young girl named Yona as she wakes up to the reality of her kingdom's struggles after her father, the king, is assassinated by Yona's beloved cousin, Suwon. Yona is then forced into the throes of exile and revenge as she tries to take back the throne from Suwon with her bodyguard, Hawk. Much like how some people will characterize One Piece as a silly adventure manga about friendship, Yona of the Dawn often gets characterized as a cute fantasy romance series that has no other implications at all. Both series are highly political in their depictions of overthrowing reigning governments, though. In Yona, she starts out as a pampered princess of the 1%, and she only knows the extravagant lifestyle of the castle. After her exile, though, she realizes how little she actually knew of her country's hatred of her father. He was a pacifist who allowed neighboring countries to take pieces of land so they don't go to war with them, which then led to corruption and poverty amongst the kingdom. All of which forces Yona to reckon with her privilege and gives her the opportunity to become a true ally of the people living in her country. Yona is an entertaining manga with cute romantic moments, to be sure, and no one is arguing against that. But this manga, much like One Piece, has very overt political messaging. It doesn't matter if the author, Mizuho Kusanagi, has or hasn't said what her political alignment is outside of the manga, or even if Yona was explicitly said to be a revolution manga. It's completely irrelevant because it doesn't matter whether Kusanagi aligns with the CDP, the LDP, or otherwise. The manga speaks for itself in that it is clearly about a young girl finally growing up and seeing the horrors wrought by her father's poor decisions. There are hundreds of other ways how Yona could be seen as political outside of the immediate plot as well. One being that this story is Korean inspired. As a Japanese mangaka, Kusanagi is working in a country that still hasn't addressed the atrocities it committed upon the Koreans in the 1900s. You could easily interpret the setting of Yona as being political because of its use of Korean inspired names and imagery in a complex war revenge story. There was a choice made by the author, and Yona didn't just spawn into her vision without any sort of thought or upbringing behind it. Whether or not it actually was a statement doesn't matter either. The choice that it is Korean inspired can now be interpreted as one. This frame of critique obviously doesn't just have to be used for manga involving wars or monarchies. I said all art is inherently political, and that also includes the seemingly unpolitical slice of life romantic comedies too. So let's take, for example, the slapstick and extremely goofy shoujo manga series Timon's B-Side. This is a manga about a girl named Utage who is in love with a J-pop group named Face, where she stands the main visual Timon. However, when she discovers that Timon's pretty boy confident persona is just a facade, and he's actually an anxious ball of unmedicated depression, she takes it upon herself to build the Timon she loves back up again. Never at any point in this manga does it turn to you as the reader and say, this is a manga about the exploitation of idols, the mental health well-being of people, and the pressures of staying normal in society. Yet, all of these themes are present in the manga merely because they are in the narrative. Timon's struggle with perfection and conflicting personas is portrayed as something that is very debilitating for him in this manga. His mental health is used as a gag at times, mostly because it's a contradiction to Utage's vision of what Timon should be, but he's never told to get over it or man up by the people that he trusts. His anxiety is taken seriously, and he's able to make strides in his personal life to overcome this throughout the series. With how mental health access has become extremely more politicized, and Japan is still very closed off from talking about these subjects, showing an extremely anxious professional could be political. You could also say that just inherently, the means of production of this series is political due to the fact that it's a shoujo manga. Shoujo manga and the magazines in which they derive from are made almost entirely by women and read almost entirely by girls. It's a form of quality entertainment that is directly sold to a young female audience's tastes, their dreams, their ideals, their passions, and so on. Young girls don't often get catered to in entertainment industries, and usually will have to go find other pieces of entertainment through lenses not considering them to have anything to enjoy. Timon's B-Side being a shoujo is political solely because of the fact that girls are having their lives reflected through the main character, and thus the author, who chose to publish their story in these magazines. And this same sentiment goes for BL, GL, and josei magazines and authors as well. Yeah, I know, this may have induced the world's biggest eye roll from a certain kind of person watching. They don't want to be inundated with themes or subject matter or politics, heaven forbid. It's exhausting for them, so why can't they just shut their brain off and not care, or not even want to see it in front of them? They just want to read a manga or watch an anime without having to care about racism, sexism, or transphobia for once. Well, then I would tell you, as a person who suffers the consequences from two of those things from the actual government right now, which is actively trying to regulate my body and tell me that my identity is fake and not real, I too would love to just turn my brain off and forget about all the politics. But when you are actively having your rights and choices stripped from you by the government, then yes, everything is political. Just look back to that Ai Weiwei quote I used up top. What is exhausting for you to see is another person's lived experience. It is political to have the freedom to choose whether or not you care. The fact that anime and manga are often seen as an escape from people who engage with it really just feels like a fan's projection. Many of those same people will view Japan as this utopian society devoid of strife for any differences among the people who live there. They see it as their Orientalist fantasy where they can escape the angry blue-haired feminists or the scary trans people that are walking down the street on their daily drive to the grocery store. Yet, Japan is not a monolith, and they have those same people that you detest in their country too. The fact that you want politics out of anime and manga just means that you are not ready to fully engage with anime and manga in the first place. This is a medium of entertainment that we are consuming mostly as outsiders, and if you think they are operating on some completely different plane of existence just because they live across the world, then you are both Orientalist, and I think you need to actually go talk to a Japanese person for once. Japan is just as political as America. They are acutely aware of the plight of the Palestinians facing genocide. The women deal with constant and unending sexism in their workplace, on the train, and at school. Trans people struggle to get the appropriate gender care. Queer people have been making headway in marriage rights. Many mixed-race people born and raised in Japan have a hard time finding homes. This is not some isolated country that has no stakes in the global political landscape. And anime and manga have been used as a soft power for Japan since the Cool Japan initiative took off in the 2000s. A whole Josei magazine was created because an editor was aware of the issues plaguing minority voices. To think Japan is your white boy Wakanda is patronizing to a population of 124 million people. Anime and manga, like all art, is inherently political. Nothing is free from political bias because humans are inherently politically biased. We all have our own viewpoints due to the environments that we grew up in, and especially in mass forms of entertainment like anime and manga, those viewpoints are received and dissected by the lens of another. If an artist is purposefully saying that they don't engage in political thought, then they too are still participating with the ability and freedom to opt out. We are all a product of the world that we live in, and it will never be a bad thing to critically digest the art that you are engaging in. If you want to opt out of that critical engagement, go for it. You'll be doing yourself a disservice, and the people around you kind of as well, but no one is stopping you. But at the same time, you have to realize that the artist you love, the musician you listen to, or the mangaka that you read are all just as biased as everyone else in the world. It's for our benefits and the benefits of art as a whole to engage with it critically and not passively. Art has fueled wars and changed minds in the past. It's been the face of rebellion. It is inherently political. And yes, that means even your favorite anime and manga as well.